welcome to Sex Ed Sundays with Dr. Sonya Maya. That's me. I am a clinical psychology clinician as well as a clinician, which is a word I made up. Do you like it? Let me know below. But it makes sense. I just love puns. Yes, dad jokes. All right, now back to the video. I have a huge passion for spreading the word on psychology facts, sexology, relationships. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you want to learn more educational content about the brain and your genitals. Today I want to talk about some facts and myths about pubic hair. We're going to get a lot into the nitty-gritty related to certain misconceptions I've learned about pubic hair, as well as some facts from history. Very interesting. Let's start going way back with the fact, okay? So in caveman times, having a full bush was more advantageous for caveman folk due to pheromone release. Back then, this was pre-monogamy times. Individuals were having sex with multiple partners left and right. Evolutionarily, this made sense. So having more attractive features to attract more mates was advantageous. A really fun fact that I learned this week, approximately 40% of men have a mushroom-shaped penis. The reason for the mushroom-shaped penis goes way back to the caveman times because having a shape like a mushroom on the top would actually help men scoop out the previous sperm from a potential previous partner when they were having sex with a female, because no, my semen is going to get through and fertilize that egg, not the last guy. Sorry, Joe. It was almost like a competitive sex game back then. I don't know what it was like, but this is what I've read, and I just thought that was really interesting. So we talked about mushroom penises, now back to pubes. So yes, if you had a full bush, which people didn't shave back then, I mean, it wasn't in style yet, nor did they really have the tools to do so. I mean, possibly stones, what have you, but it just wasn't anything that someone would think about like these days. And more pubes was a good thing, like I said, because of pheromone release. Pheromones are secreted from sweat glands, and because the pubic region has a lot of these glands, you can imagine that having hair down there would help hold on to some of that secretion. I don't like that word, but you know what I'm saying. So back then in caveman times, it made sense because, ooh, that smells good, I'm gonna go have sex with that person. Pubic hair can also be seen as a sign of puberty, because once somebody grows pubic hair, that is when it is pretty evident that they are able to reproduce, whether you're a man or a woman. When you have gone through puberty, that's when you start getting hair, that's when you're able to become fertile. So evolutionarily, yes, if you appear more fertile for a lot of other reasons, you might be more likely to attract mates. This is why other facial features can be associated with fertility and therefore attractiveness, such as blushed cheeks. That person might be horny, so I'm gonna go fertilize that egg. Fuller lips can be a sign of fertility, curvier bodies as well, which is why a lot of these traits have been seen as attractive over time. To some people, not all. Another common reason that individuals might want to keep their pubes, and this is a fact, is because pubes actually help reduce friction during sex or just day-to-day activities, exercise, etc. But if you really think about it, sex, lots of friction. If there is hair there, it acts as somewhat of a barrier to your very sensitive region. You can still have very pleasurable sex without hair, but yes, a lot of people like it better with hair. Let's talk about a myth. This is actually one of the most common misconceptions about pubic hair. A lot of women throughout history have claimed that they remove all of their pubic hair for hygienic purposes. Men too have also said that. Approximately 59% of women and 61% of men have claimed that they groom that area because of hygiene purposes. It is actually a myth that having pubic hair is bad for one's hygiene. The opposite is actually true. If you think about the purpose and function of hair on your body, whether it's armpit hair, eyelashes, leg hair, nose hair, pubes can actually help trap dirt and bacteria. It can actually help keep certain bacteria and dirt and whatever is harmful to the body away from the genitals, which is a very sensitive part of your body, so I can see why that would actually be a protective factor. You might actually be less likely to get certain infections such as UTIs, STIs, or cellulitis, which is a very common painful bacterial infection when you have pubes. And I would actually argue that the methods that people use to remove their hair does typically make them more susceptible to infection depending on how they do it. I did link below a video by Dr. Rena Malik. She talks about safer ways to remove your pubic hair. So I'm not gonna get into that in this video, but I just listened to it a couple times yesterday. Really good advice on there, so go watch that video after this if you really wanna remove your hair and you don't want to suffer from the risks associated with it. Bottom line, having pubic hair, there's nothing unclean about that. As long as you're washing that area with water and using possibly a pH balanced cleanser down there, nothing more. You don't want to really put too much soap in that area unless it is unscented and doesn't have those harmful chemicals that seems to be in almost everything that we buy these days. Wash it regularly and you're good if you have pubes. It's totally fine. Let's get into another fact. I find this one really interesting because we're going all the way back to the 16th and 17th century. So back in the 1700s or so, maybe a little bit before that, it has been said that pubes are actually in fashion. So having more of a bush was seen as attractive. Prostitution was a huge part of culture, and sadly, this is pretty unethical in my opinion. A lot of prostitutes would contract STIs, syphilis, etc., and then they would wear merkins, which is a pubic wig, in order to hide the symptoms of their infections so that they could continue doing their work. And there were other reasons that people wore merkins that I'm going to get into, but that was one of the #1 sources that I found with the merkin situation, because I was like, merkin, that's a funny word. It's a funny idea. It seems interesting to me. I'm not laughing at anybody that does it. I think it's kind of cool. It's just like interesting because that was a part of the norm back then. It's so hot to wear pubic hair. If you have to remove it for any reason, slap on a merkin. I also want to mention that this is back in the day when contraceptives were not very effective, let's say. We didn't have good condoms back then. They would actually use sheep gut and animal intestines to make condoms. And it looks something like this. I was watching a video yesterday and it looks something like this. They would actually use these animal intestine condoms. I think they were called condoms back then. And they would wash them and reuse them, especially if you didn't have a lot of money. You had to make sure this can't go to waste. But I can't even imagine them being that effective, but who knows? What do I know? That would explain, yes, more spread of STIs, more of a motivation to hide the STI. Apparently, women would often tie on merkins made from either real pubic hair or other hair from their body or someone else's hair or animal hair. They're not really sure. The historians are not really sure, but yeah. Lots of different ways to make a merkin. I also saw that apparently men were reported to have used merkins over their genitals when they would play female roles in acting, because unfortunately during those times it wasn't legal or kosher for women to act, which is dumb and I don't like that at all. But when men would play female roles in acting, they would wear merkins to cover their genitals. Another common reason that people would remove their pubic hair, because why would you want to remove it if it was in style? They would actually remove it to avoid getting lice. So genital lice was somewhat common and going around back then, so sex workers especially would remove their pubic hair to avoid getting lice and then would use a merkin. And I was actually looking into it because I haven't heard a lot about crabs recently, but apparently pubic lice is still quite common nowadays. Anyone can get it if they have close personal contact with someone else that has them. About 3 million people in the United States get pubic lice every single year. So it's still happening. And it's a not so fun fact, unfortunately, that you can definitely get crabs. Pretty sure it's the non-medical term for it is crabs from sexual contact with another partner. I also just learned that pubic lice is different than head lice. So crabs or genital lice, they don't like living in the head region and vice versa. There's this episode of South Park called Licecapades, highly recommend, it's really funny. But they make fun of Angelina Jolie at the end of the episode. Spoiler alert, all of the classmates in South Park had lice and they were getting checked for lice, but no one wanted to admit it. It ends up happening to the lice when they moved to a different area because they got rid of the lice out of the heads, and then all of a sudden Angelina Jolie was like scratching her area and they were pretty much making fun of her as if she had crabs. I don't know if she ever actually did, but South Park just makes jabs at everybody. But South Park had it wrong because head lice wouldn't want to live down there anyway. I just thought that was a funny a funny point to make, different type of lice. In terms of merkins nowadays, you can still buy them. They're still on the market. I really strongly love this one right here. Stop smirking at my merkin. You can especially find merkins in LGBTQ+ friendly stores. Some drag queens might actually use merkins to cover their genitalia sometimes. Pubes used to be in style, whereas we jump to these days, approximately 80 to 90% of individuals are grooming their pubes. So culture and times and fashion definitely changes, especially when it comes to body hair. Let's talk about another myth when it comes to pubes. Another myth is that pubic hair just keeps growing and growing. But no, pubic hair does stop growing when it reaches a certain point. When it gets to about a ½ inch to 2 inches, then it's going to reach its potential. It's not going to keep growing. You're not going to have like a cousin it situation. That would be crazy. You'd have to, you know, really groom it if you wear shorts and everything, if that was the case. But luckily, no, it stops growing after a certain amount of time. It's not like your hair on your head. Another myth is that your pubes down there are not always going to match the hair on your head. There's that really weird and kind of cringe saying, what is it? Does the carpet match the drapes? There's something about that saying that gives me cringes. I feel like most of the time people that say that are being creepy, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What do you think? But yeah, the carpet doesn't always match the drapes. That'd be a myth to assume that it does. In conclusion, many people remove hair down there for various reasons. A lot of men actually trim their pubic hair down there to appear larger. And yeah, it's really a personal preference. Some people really just like to keep it down there. And I really want to emphasize, shaving your hair down there, grooming it, waxing it, doesn't necessarily mean you're being more hygienic. Also doesn't mean that you're making a bad choice either. It's really a personal preference. People claim that they have the best sex of their life once they get waxed and everything, but it really depends too, because when you get waxed, even if you're doing it yourself or having a professional do it, you might still experience ingrown hairs, and you have to make sure to moisturize that area, and there's certain hygiene hacks you need to pay attention to if you're going to go about the waxing route. But otherwise, you know, really it could enhance your sex life if that's something that makes you feel more comfortable, especially if it's going to improve your self-esteem, because mental is so important in order to get in the mood. If you have a partner that has a differing preference, let's say you prefer to have a bush and your partner likes it bare, it's something to talk about, you know? It's very similar to if you were dating somebody who, when you met them, they didn't have any facial hair, and then all of a sudden they decide to grow a mustache or a beard. It's something that you might want to talk about, just like anywhere else, because if you have a personal preference and your partner does something different, you know, that sounds pretty disappointing, but maybe it's something to communicate about and come to a conclusion on. And I don't want to ever say that you should tell someone what to do, but it doesn't seem to be somewhat of a norm in society to check in with your partner about attractiveness. So you let me know what you think about that, because I'm definitely not in the mindset of controlling and owning somebody. I think that monogamy and heteronormative culture does seem to have this emphasis, which can be somewhat misogynistic and controlling. But at the same time, it's okay to want to make efforts to listen to your partner and be like, okay, do you like shorter hair? Do you like longer hair? Can we meet in the middle? I don't think there's anything wrong with having those conversations, as long as you're not forcing somebody to look the way you like. Like I said before, if you're gonna remove that hair, if you're gonna groom it, do it safely. I have some resources below for doing that safely, and other readings and research that I used to make this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe and turn on bell notifications for more content like this. I'm posting every Sunday for Sex Ed Sundays with Dr. Sonya Maya. If you have any topic requests, please make sure to leave them below as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.